Hello and welcome to Liverpool Transfer News Daily on Wednesday, the 25th of January 2023. I'm your host, David Comerford, and I'm joined by Emmet Gates to discuss a couple more Liverpool rumours. So we'll start with one that was a little bit more speculative. The agent of Bayern Munich midfielder Ryan Gravenberch was seen at Anfield for the weekend's clash with Chelsea. Now, obviously, social media went into a little bit of a tailspin over that, thinking that there might be a potential loan move getting arranged. There was a report then from Florian Plettenberg from Sky Germany that Bayern actually want to hold on to Gravenberch until the end of the season. Even though he has had limited game time, he hasn't actually started any Bundesliga matches since he moved from Ajax last summer. He started a couple in the Champions League, but generally he's found sort of those minutes hard to come by. So whilst it seemed like that might be a viable avenue, it looks like Bayern have shut that one down. But Emmet, that doesn't mean we can't still make something out of this, because last summer we saw Artur obviously arrive at the end of the window. Someone in probably a similar position to Gravenberch, and that he was a little bit out of favour at kind of a top European club. Is that the kind of avenue Liverpool could explore in the past, in the last week of the window, I should say?
Yeah, I
Because
think so.
I was going to say it doesn't seem like there's necessarily money available for, like, a standard sign, a standard permanent sign, and an expensive one. But maybe that there's kind of an opening there, or does Artur on the other side of it, despite the risks of that approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the Artur deal, I think Liverpool just got unlucky in the sense that he played 13 minutes, got injured, and hasn't been seen again. I think that's just unfortunate, and just sometimes the way things work in football. But in terms of that approach, I think that's kind of the avenue that Liverpool need to explore. Obviously, money is not bountiful, so they kind of need to be a bit more creative and maybe look at players that are kind of on the bench at some of the biggest teams, like Artur was at Juventus, and Ryan Gravenberch is at Bayern Munich, and maybe see if they can engineer a loan move just to get Liverpool over the line until the end of the season. I do think it requires a little more creativity rather than taking the Chelsea approach and just signing any player that can kick a ball professionally. It seems Chelsea are signing everyone these days. So I think Liverpool are obviously on the other end of that spectrum, and they do need to be a little bit more canny, a little bit more creative, and maybe look around and see who's not getting a lot of game time, and that's the carrot that they can dangle in front of them. Just going, look, you come here, you get game time until the end of the season. It won't be permanent, but you get to play football. And I think it would tide Liverpool over until they get to the summer, and then obviously they can regroup and go after the main targets. So yeah, I do think that is an avenue they should explore.
Yeah, it's one of them. It almost feels as if the club have maybe accepted some short-term pain in terms of not actually throwing money at the issue in January, because they'd rather save that money for somebody else, let's say, in the actual summer window. But if that was the case, would you sort of look to maybe accept that Arsenal loan was a failure at this point, given things like squad space in the Premier League and Champions League? Would you sort of say, you know what, let's accept that one hasn't come off, and maybe send him back, try and create a little bit of room for us to do something? Because there is still, as much as it doesn't look like anything's imminent right now, there is still time left in the window.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tricky one, because we still don't know how long Artur is going to be out for. Though there was speculation a while back that he'd be back by February, but we're near the end of January now, and there's still kind of no official word of when a return will be penciled in. So I do think, it's maybe the wise choice would be return Arthur to sender and maybe look around someone else who can actually play here and now. I don't think Liverpool are in a position where they can't wait, till March for Artur to, return to playing, and then by the time he gets to full fitness, the season will nearly be over. And I do think you obviously do put it down as a failure, but I don't think that's anyone's fault. It was a bit of a gamble, a low risk gamble. He signed, he arrived, he got injured, and then that's kind of it. Sometimes that happens in football, but at least Liverpool, what they paid 7 million for the loan. It's not the end of the world, really, in relative football terms. So, yeah, I think the wise choice would be to send him back, I believe. But whether they
Yeah,
do that or not, it's a different matter.
yeah. it's one of them because I think if there is to be a loan, obviously also you're not going to activate that buy option now. You know that ship has sailed. But we saw with Kabak and with Artur that if Liverpool are going to do these kind of emergency loans, they will at least give themselves an option if the player is kind of exceptional for them to make a move afterwards. So who knows? It wouldn't necessarily just be kind of a emergency kind of short term cover signing, but we'll see. We'll see if anything happens on that front anyway. We'll move on now to another report that Liverpool are looking at Federico Chiesa as a possible successor to Mohamed Salah. Obviously, a player that really sort of catapulted himself onto the radar of fans across Europe with his performances in the Euros when Italy won it. How similar, though, would you say he is to Salah? Because are Liverpool going to go out and get someone who's an identical profile or maybe someone a little bit different as they try and find kind of an heir for Salah?
I don't see a lot of similarities in style between Salah and Chiesa, to be honest. I mean, they're both explosive and good in tight corners, but apart from that, I think Salah is more of a finisher than Chiesa is. Chiesa is probably still a little bit raw. And at this point, he probably would be the polished, finished article, shall we say, had he not got injured a year ago against Roma. And he basically tore his ACL, which pretty much kept him out for all of 2022. He's been gently coaxed back into playing by Juve coach Max Allegri. It's like, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there. I think off the top of my head, he started once since he's made his return. He made his return, I think, at the end of October, the beginning of November, and he's only really started once, which was in the 5-1 defeat to Napoli in Naples, when Allegri played him as a right wing back in a real experimental role, which he really wasn't good in because he was too busy going forward and kind of neglected his defensive duties. But yeah, Chiesa is he's not an unknown quantity, but it's difficult to say if he still be the same player, post injury as he was, as you alluded to at Euro 2020, when he, made everybody stand up and take notice of him. So it's difficult to kind of say what this version of Chiesa is like now. He scored, I think he scored against Monza in the Coppa Italia, and he kind of, to me, he looks like the same player that he was before, but it's still going to take time. And Allegri still isn't really giving him starts. It's still cameo appearances. But I don't really see a whole lot of similarities between he and Salah. The only thing that to me is, obviously Chiesa's 6 years younger. But I really can't see, the report is that Jurgen Klopp wants to replace Salah with Chiesa. To me, I can't really see that happening. And saying that, Salah, we all know Salah has had a so-so 2022, and his start this season really hasn't been much better to 2023. But I still don't see Liverpool giving him up for Chiesa. I think if we had Chiesa that we saw at Euro 2020, if he had been like that for the last year, if he hadn't been injured, then there maybe be a bit more credibility to it. But the fact that he's been injured for so long and he's just gently being brought back into the fold by Allegri, there'd be a lot of doubts there, and the chances of an injury reoccurring are high. So I really can't see it. It maybe be brought in to play alongside Salah. If you Chiesa on one wing and Salah on the other, would be formidable on paper. But then you've got Luis Diaz, you've Cody Gakpo. So it's like, what do you do with all these wingers? So I really can't see Liverpool getting rid of Salah to bring in Chiesa. I just can't see it. Definitely not at this time, when there's still doubts about what he's like post-injury.
Yeah, it's given the investment that's just been made in Salah as well, you imagine the club will persist with that a little bit, even if his form has been maybe not at his best for a prolonged period now. But say we do get the, you mentioned there that there has been glimmers of the old Chiesa in there, and hopefully the way Juventus are managing him will serve him well in that regard in terms of ramping back up slowly and avoiding any sort of setbacks. But if we were to get kind of the old version of Chiesa, how exciting a signing would that be for Liverpool? Just in a sort of hypothetical sense, because he has been someone who's been linked a few times down the years, maybe not by the absolute strongest sources, but it's one of them that kind of pops up quite frequently. So you wouldn't be surprised if there was some interest there. But sort of prime Chiesa, you know, how good the player is he? Is he someone who maybe has been almost a little bit forgotten because of that injury that you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking hypotheticals here, and Liverpool did sign Chiesa, and he had shown that he was the Chiesa of 2 years ago, I think it would be fantastic for Liverpool. He can play in the right wing, he can play in the left wing, he can beat people for fun, he can score. He's probably, I would say, he's a better finisher than Luis Diaz is, who is a very hit and miss. Where Chiesa is a bit more polished. But in saying that, Chiesa in turn probably isn't as polished as Mo Salah is at scoring. But yeah, he would be a very exciting signing for Liverpool. He's very explosive. He can twist and turn. He can tie players up in knots. He's very quick. He is strong. And like I said, he is probably a better finisher, I would say, than Luis Diaz. So if Liverpool were getting the old Chiesa, I would be very excited. But I think just at this point, we really don't know if he's still going to be that same player. If in the second half of the season for Juve, if Chiesa starts a lot more games under Allegri, and we kind of see, he's getting back to his best, then maybe if there was a move in the summer, it would definitely ramp up the excitement levels, I feel. But I just think at this point, there's just too much of an unknown with him. But yeah, if it was the old Chiesa, would be very excited.
Yeah, you have to manage the risk that you take, I suppose, especially when the transfer fee would be so huge. But one quick one to finish. Obviously, we've just seen Juventus handed this huge points deduction. Just looking now, they're down to 10th in the table now, and they've actually got even fewer points than Liverpool now, which is quite an impressive feat. Only 23 points with that deduction. So, do you anticipate, from what you've seen, that having any sort of effect in terms of outgoings? Because there seems to be, absolute. I mean, the club does seem to be in crisis right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I think the minus 15 points that'll be reduced on appeal. I'd be amazed if the minus 15 points stuck. I could see it maybe being -6, it may be cut in half, or it could be -9 or whatever. So first off, I'd be amazed if Juve the minus 15 actually stuck, and that was it. But the appeal will take, I think, about a month or two. It's Italy, so it could take 6. The season could be over by the time it gets reduced. But I do think that Juve reached the tipping point, and I do think that they will build around young Italian players in the future. So you will see the likes of Di Maria leave, Adrian Rabiot, Weston McKennie. They'll all be sold, I think. But I think from what I've read, the intention is to build around Chiesa, around Vlahovic, around Locatelli, and Juve have 3 or 4 youngsters coming through. I think the plan is going forward, even if the deducted points is reduced and they do somehow make it into the Champions League, I do think the plan going forward is to build a young Juve around Italians, and Chiesa is pretty much going to be the central figure in that. So I would be amazed, despite Juve's financial difficulties, that they would accept a bid for Chiesa. Unless he wants to leave, then that's a different story altogether. But if he wants to stay, I do think Juve would reject all offers for him. But yeah, in saying that, it's easy to say this now. In 2 months, things could look very, very differently. And even if the appeal is successful and the minus 15 points does get reduced, the chances of Juve making the Champions League next year are very, very slim, and that's going to impact finances, because Juve are a club that lives off Champions League money, and they need it. So not having it would have a major impact on their finances going into next season. So, say Liverpool, for example, they could basically make Juve an offer that they can't refuse with Chiesa, and reluctantly have to give him up. So there will be opportunities, I do think, to sign Juve players come the summer, but I don't think we'll not know until the appeal is either successful or not, until the season finishes.
Yeah, it's a lot of uncertainty around that one, and it could have, depending on how it goes, could have lasting effects, like you say. But yeah, thanks very much, Emmett. We'll wrap up the stream there. We'll be back tomorrow, though, for another Liverpool transfer news stream. In the meantime, remember to check out all the written content that goes out on liverpool.com today. But yeah, until then, take care.